Imagine waking up to discover that the car you've always dreamed of buying suddenly costs thousands more than it did yesterday. Sounds unthinkable, doesn't it? But on March 27, 2025, that's exactly what millions of Americans faced. Donald Trump had just announced a shocking 25% tariff on every car and auto part entering the United States from abroad.
And what we're going to be doing is a 25% tariff on all cars that are not made in the United States. If they're made in the United States, there's absolutely no tariff.
It was a move no one saw coming. Not Wall Street, not major automakers, and certainly not the average American consumer. Overnight, a massive $219.5 billion industry that relied heavily on imports was thrown into chaos. Dealerships frantically recalculated prices, factories abroad halted shipments, and across the globe, markets plunged into uncertainty. But this wasn't just another political headline. It was a declaration of economic war, one that would reshape the very foundation of global trade and forever alter the automotive landscape. Here's why this matters for you. This single decision could dramatically affect your next car purchase, your job security, and even the broader economy. But how did we reach this dramatic moment? To understand this, we need to look at the road Trump traveled to make this controversial decision. And it's more complicated than you think. The hidden story behind the tariffs. Most people don't realize how long Trump had been planning this explosive move. While the announcement seemed impulsive, the groundwork had been meticulously laid for years. Ever since his first term in office, Trump had targeted America's trade deficit, a number that haunted him politically. The auto industry was always a primary focus, accounting for billions in foreign imports annually. It became a symbolic battlefield, reflecting deeper tensions between nationalist economic policies and globalization. Trump's tariffs weren't just about economics. They were about pride, power, and political messaging. His administration repeatedly argued that reliance on foreign-made vehicles weakened America's economic security, siphoning jobs and prosperity overseas. But behind closed doors, it was clear that this policy was also intended as a bold political statement, one designed to rally voters around the promise of America first. Yet there's something Trump's critics often miss. He wasn't acting purely out of nationalism. He believed genuinely and controversially that aggressive protectionism was necessary to revive domestic manufacturing. It was a gamble built on promises made to voters in key swing states, many of whom had felt forgotten by globalization's relentless advance. And here's the twist. This tariff was not just aimed at foreign automakers. It was also a direct challenge to American car giants like Ford and General Motors, who had increasingly moved manufacturing offshore. Trump was sending a message loud and clear: produce in America, or pay the price. This changes everything because the real battle isn't just about tariffs. It's about control over the economic future of America. But how did the industry react? Chaos hits the auto giants. Here's where it gets really interesting. Within minutes of Trump's announcement, boardrooms from Detroit to Tokyo erupted into panic. Ford executives frantically convened emergency meetings, while General Motors immediately released statements warning of drastic price increases. Abroad, Toyota, BMW, and Volkswagen watched billions wiped from their market value as investors fled. But why was the reaction so severe? Because global automakers had spent decades weaving intricate supply chains across continents, chains now shattered by one bold policy stroke. Tariffs of 25% didn't just mean higher costs. They threatened to upend the entire business model on which the global auto industry was built. Take BMW as an example. Their plant in Spartanburg, South Carolina, was America's largest automotive exporter. Suddenly, exporting vehicles became prohibitively expensive, throwing thousands of American jobs into uncertainty overnight. Likewise, Toyota, heavily reliant on factories spread across Mexico, Canada, and Japan, found itself forced into painful decisions: raise prices sharply, reduce production drastically, or risk catastrophic financial losses. Within just 24 hours, auto stocks plummeted. General Motors lost nearly 15% of its market value overnight. Ford wasn't far behind. Analysts estimated that tens of thousands of American jobs linked directly or indirectly to the auto sector were suddenly hanging by a thread. Here's why this matters for you. The sudden disruption in global production doesn't just impact corporate profits, it cascades down to the prices you pay and the job opportunities available in your community. But this immediate chaos was just the start of something much bigger. Trump had ignited a chain reaction with global implications, far beyond anything the auto industry had ever faced. If you liked the video so far, please subscribe to our channel so you don't miss anything. Your wallet versus Trump's war. Imagine if the price of your next vehicle jumped by over $5,000 overnight, not because the car got better, but purely due to politics. That's exactly what millions of American car buyers suddenly faced. The consumer impact of Trump's tariff was immediate, significant, and personal. For decades, affordable cars, many assembled abroad, allowed American families to comfortably own 2 or even 3 vehicles. But now affordable cars like the Toyota Camry, Honda Civic, or Volkswagen Golf, beloved by American drivers, faced enormous price hikes. Even vehicles produced domestically saw increased prices due to foreign-made parts now costing substantially more. An analysis from Reuters suggested the average vehicle price could spike by around 10%, translating into thousands of dollars more per vehicle. The situation raised uncomfortable questions. Would American families delay new car purchases, hurting dealerships nationwide? Would used car prices surge as buyers shifted to pre-owned vehicles? Dealers, consumers, and automakers alike faced an unprecedented dilemma. Showrooms emptied as consumers hesitated, unsure if now was the worst possible time to buy a car, or perhaps the best, before prices rose even further. Analysts warned that long-term consequences could permanently shift American consumer habits. But the impact didn't stop there. The American auto market isn't just about consumer prices. It's about jobs. Nearly 8 million Americans work directly or indirectly in the automotive sector. Trump's policy placed a huge question mark over their futures, raising fears of layoffs and factory closures nationwide. And here's the twist. While the tariffs aimed to protect American manufacturing, they might inadvertently accelerate its decline, triggering retaliation and escalating trade wars. The delicate global auto industry, built over decades, was now dangerously fragile. One bold move had turned an already uncertain market into a battleground. But this wasn't just a story of American politics or economics. This was a global showdown. Trump's bold tariffs weren't the end. They marked the beginning of a dramatic and risky new era, and what came next had the potential to reshape the world economy forever. The global auto industry panics. Most people don't realize just how fragile the global auto industry really is until a single decision threatens its entire existence. When Trump announced his sweeping 25% tariffs, the impact wasn't just financial, it was logistical chaos. Overnight, decades-old supply chains carefully built by automakers shattered like glass. Factories in Japan, Germany, Mexico, and Korea abruptly stopped shipments to the U.S., unsure whether they could still afford to deliver parts and vehicles at a profit. Companies had spent billions perfecting a just-in-time supply model, where car components traveled seamlessly across borders, arriving exactly when needed. But now these finely tuned systems collapsed under the sudden weight of new costs. Production lines in America slowed to a crawl, or halted altogether. Ford and General Motors scrambled to find local suppliers, but American alternatives were scarce, expensive, or non-existent. This wasn't just about higher prices. Production itself hung in the balance. Analysts warned of prolonged shortages, empty dealership lots, and factories forced into indefinite shutdowns, potentially putting tens of thousands of American jobs at risk. This matters deeply to you because every disruption to global supply chains directly impacts your job security, the products available to you, and ultimately your economic future. America versus the world. The political fallout. A single decision turning trusted allies into fierce opponents overnight. Trump's 25% auto tariff did exactly that, dramatically intensifying diplomatic tensions between the U.S. and its closest trading partners. Canada, Mexico, Japan, and the European Union immediately condemned the tariffs as unjustified and harmful, threatening swift retaliation. Canada's Prime Minister called the decision deeply disappointing, promising countermeasures that could disrupt critical supply chains even further. Mexico, heavily dependent on auto exports to the U.S., warned of severe economic consequences, immediately imposing retaliatory duties on American agricultural exports. In Europe, the reaction was even more intense. Germany, whose auto industry represents the heartbeat of its economy, saw Trump's move as a direct attack. Within days, Brussels prepared a list of retaliatory tariffs targeting American products, ranging from whiskey to motorcycles, an economic chess move designed to pressure Washington into reversing course. The political consequences spiraled rapidly. Trade representatives scrambled into tense negotiations, trying to limit damage to global relationships. Allies felt betrayed, accusing Trump of violating decades-old trade agreements. The situation quickly transformed from a mere trade dispute into an international crisis, testing long-held diplomatic ties. And here's why this matters to you. Political battles over trade directly impact your daily life, from the prices at your local grocery store to job stability in your community. A trade war isn't theoretical, it's intensely personal. But amidst this political firefight, automakers faced an urgent decision: adapt quickly or risk annihilation. How automakers are fighting back. Here's where it gets really interesting. Faced with tariffs that could cripple their American sales, automakers began executing emergency strategies. Companies that had long championed globalization suddenly scrambled to minimize the damage, unveiling drastic new measures to survive Trump's tariff tsunami. Ford, heavily reliant on Mexican plants for trucks and SUVs popular in the US, faced a devastating cost increase. Within days, it announced plans to fast-track investment in new domestic plants, reshaping its production footprint overnight. General Motors, caught similarly off guard, publicly pleaded for tariff exemptions, while quietly exploring radical moves, such as increasing production in China and Europe to offset North American losses. Foreign giants like Hyundai and Honda quickly considered reducing their US presence, shifting focus to more stable markets. Meanwhile, Tesla emerged as a surprising potential winner, leveraging its heavily domestic supply chain as a competitive advantage. Elon Musk wasted no time positioning Tesla as the new face of American auto resilience, highlighting its minimal reliance on imported vehicles. Yet even quick responses carried significant risk. Retooling factories costs billions, takes years, and provides no immediate relief. Automakers found themselves trapped between impossible choices: absorb tariffs and slash profits, pass costs to consumers, or undertake expensive restructuring. And here's the twist: Trump's tariffs, designed to protect American manufacturing, might ironically drive major automakers away from the US altogether, potentially costing thousands of domestic jobs, the exact opposite of their intended goal. But as automakers fought to adapt, another unexpected winner quietly emerged: countries who saw an opportunity to step in where America left a vacuum. Here's a surprising twist few anticipated: Trump's tariffs handed Europe an extraordinary economic opportunity. The hidden victims of tariffs. Imagine working in an industry your entire life, believing your job is secure, only to see it threatened overnight by a political decision you had no control over. Trump's 25% tariffs didn't just hit corporate boardrooms, they struck at the heart of American families, towns, and livelihoods. Most people don't realize that for every automotive factory job in the United States, 7 additional jobs depend indirectly on the auto sector, from parts suppliers to restaurants and local retail stores. Communities like Spartanburg, South Carolina, where BMW employs 11,000 workers, suddenly faced crippling uncertainty. BMW's plant, a cornerstone of local prosperity, exports 70% of its cars globally. But under Trump's tariffs, their cars became drastically less competitive, endangering thousands of jobs overnight. In Michigan, auto workers watched nervously as factories halted production lines, unsure of their future. Supplier companies, often smaller family-run businesses, faced existential crises. The domino effect extended rapidly. Fewer cars produced meant fewer parts needed, fewer suppliers employed, and less money circulating through local economies. Here's why this matters for you. The collapse or contraction of even one major auto plant can devastate entire towns, affecting everything from local schools to property values. And here's the twist: while Trump's tariffs aimed at bringing manufacturing home, their immediate effect risked pushing families into economic insecurity, exactly what the tariffs sought to prevent. Yet the pain felt by workers was just the beginning. Consumers nationwide were about to face their own harsh reality. Your car just became a luxury item. Owning a basic family vehicle suddenly felt like buying a luxury car. Thanks to Trump's tariffs, this scenario became reality. Auto industry analysts estimated that average new car prices would spike between $5,000 and $8,000 almost immediately. Suddenly, popular affordable cars like Honda Accords, Toyota Camrys, and Volkswagen Golfs moved into price brackets previously occupied by premium vehicles. Families faced difficult choices: delay buying, opt for older used cars, or stretch budgets dangerously thin. Dealerships emptied, sales plunged, and consumers, especially younger families and first-time buyers, suddenly found reliable transportation financially out of reach. But it wasn't just new cars. The used car market exploded overnight, driving prices to unprecedented levels as desperate consumers looked for affordable alternatives. Even basic transportation became a stressful financial decision for millions, forcing painful sacrifices elsewhere in their budgets. Here's where it gets really interesting. The ripple effect of these higher costs impacted not just your wallet, but your quality of life. With vehicles more expensive, families reconsidered long commutes, school choices, and even basic social activities. Life's fundamental routines became more costly and uncertain. And here's why this matters to you. Your mobility directly influences your job opportunities, education, and overall quality of life. Trump's tariffs risked drastically reshaping everyday life, making cars, a necessity for many, into a privilege. But while consumers grappled with soaring costs, another storm was brewing in the political world, where these economic pains were rapidly becoming political liabilities. Trump's political gamble. Trump promised a manufacturing revival, but now the very voters who trusted him are beginning to question his strategy. When the tariffs first hit, blue-collar voters in Rust Belt states celebrated, believing protectionism would finally restore lost factory jobs. But within weeks, the optimism turned into anxiety. Factories in Michigan, Ohio, and Pennsylvania began scaling back production, or even pausing entirely, unable to source critical imported components without incurring massive costs. Auto unions that initially supported protectionism openly criticized Trump's move. Workers who once hoped tariffs would strengthen their positions found themselves facing layoffs instead. Local leaders voiced concerns, highlighting uncertainty and broken promises, rather than the resurgence voters expected. The political backlash intensified quickly. Democrats exploited the unrest, accusing Trump of harming American workers. Polls showed declining support among voters who had previously backed Trump's economic nationalism wholeheartedly. His strongest selling point, reviving domestic manufacturing, now risked becoming his biggest political liability. This growing unrest in America's heartland matters because the voters Trump intended to help may now determine his political fate, turning his boldest economic move into an unexpected political gamble. Tesla's surprising victory. This single presidential decision inadvertently boosts one company into a position of dominance. Trump's controversial tariffs unexpectedly propelled Tesla, America's electric vehicle pioneer, into exactly this position. While other automakers grappled with higher costs and supply chain nightmares, Tesla's heavily domestic manufacturing approach positioned it perfectly to thrive amidst the turmoil. People don't realize that Tesla had spent years quietly building a largely American-based supply chain. Its gigafactories in Nevada, Texas, and California produced batteries, vehicles, and components domestically, minimizing its exposure to Trump's tariffs. Elon Musk seized the moment, emphasizing Tesla's resilience and proudly declaring it a true symbol of American innovation. An ironic twist considering Musk's previous public disagreements with Trump's policies. Investors quickly took note. As Ford and General Motors stocks stumbled, Tesla's surged, reaching record highs. Consumers, wary of price hikes affecting traditional gas-powered imports, suddenly saw electric vehicles not just as an eco-friendly choice, but as an economic necessity. But here's why this matters to you. Tesla's rise hinted at a broader shift, accelerating America's transition toward electric vehicles faster than anyone had predicted. Trump's protectionist gamble, ironically, might accelerate a cleaner automotive future, transforming the entire market landscape. And here's the twist. The tariffs designed to protect traditional American manufacturing might have instead signaled the end of the internal combustion engine's dominance, an outcome no one saw coming. America at a crossroads. This announcement placed America precisely at this intersection. The tariffs weren't just a bold economic move. They represented a fundamental decision about America's future role in the global economy. Could protectionism revive domestic manufacturing, fulfilling promises Trump made to voters in Rust Belt states? Or would isolationism diminish America's competitiveness, innovation, and global influence? The initial consequences, economic chaos, strained alliances, disrupted supply chains, provided a troubling preview of potential long-term outcomes. Yet supporters argued these pains were temporary, necessary costs for rebuilding American manufacturing resilience. Others warned that Trump's move risked irreversible damage, driving allies away, strengthening rivals, and burdening American consumers indefinitely. Here's why this matters to you. The path America chooses directly impacts your economic security, job opportunities, consumer costs, and the nation's global standing for decades to come. It's not just about cars. It's about the kind of economy and society you'll live in. And here's the twist. Trump's tariffs, initially seen as economic protectionism, might instead define America's future trajectory, either reinforcing its strength or accelerating its decline. The choice America makes now will resonate for generations. As the dust settled, one truth became clear. Trump's bold decision wasn't just an economic experiment. It was a historic gamble with uncertain outcomes. The world watched anxiously, waiting to see whether America's boldest move in decades would restore its manufacturing might or hasten its economic isolation. America's future hung in the balance, driven not by boardroom decisions alone, but by millions of individual choices, yours included. The outcome, now uncertain, rested with everyday Americans facing decisions reshaped by this historic policy. Decisions about jobs, purchases, votes, and visions of America's economic future. The story of Trump's tariffs isn't finished. It's only beginning.